is getting the backyard decorated, and James is squirting her with the hose. I feel like being with James would be like dating a 12-year-old who had too many Monster Energy drinks. He really gives those vibes. Right now we see Ariana and Katie at Ariana's house, and they are talking about the previous night. They got a lift home, and when the driver got to Ariana's house, he said, "I've dropped you off here before. You were arguing with your husband." And it was the Lyft driver from the night that Ariana found out about the affair. And she's like, "Yeah, we're no longer together." And he's like, "Oh good, that makes sense." And she's telling Katie, "I wonder if he even understands that this is a whole thing." And Katie says, "I wonder if he's ever heard of Reddit," which is really funny because out of all of the VPR cast, I feel like Katie would be a Reddit girly. And I say that being a Reddit girly myself. They're talking about the previous night at See You Next Tuesday. And Ariana says, Lala did have some valid points while talking to Schwartz. But of course, Schwartz thinks that he's being ganged up on whenever anybody has anything to say to him. In her confessional, Ariana is looking in a handheld mirror and kind of touching her makeup up. And she says, "This guy I haven't spoken to in months suddenly has some sort of authority on who I am and how I live my life. That's interesting, just like a man." I mean, truly iconic. I can tell what the producers were trying to do here. They were trying to make her look bad or vain by looking in a mirror while she's doing her confessional. But I think that this happens a lot. I think the cast kind of just riffs with the producers, and they may be, taking a drink or getting ready or something, and they just so happen to like what Ariana said. But I feel like they were trying to shade her because that's what they're doing this entire season, apparently. But it didn't work. I thought it was iconic. We end their scene with talking about the Tahoe trip. Katie says that she would rather eat a jean jacket than go on the trip, and that they have more important things to do at home regarding the opening of Something About Her. And Ariana says she wouldn't feel comfortable being in a cabin with Sandoval. Now we are at Villa Rosa, Lisa's house. Imagine your house has a name. Should I name my house? Scheana and Lala are arriving to Villa Rosa, and Scheana makes the comment, "How much do you want to bet that Lisa's gonna make a comment on why we're not wearing any clothing?" Because they're on their way to the pool party, and they're both wearing bikinis and cover-up kind of things. Lisa does always make comments on the girls' clothing, and I don't love that because she straight up made her staff wear a handkerchief for their work outfit forever. So whenever she has comments on the girls' clothes, I'm always kind of like, okay, girl. Anyway, Lisa comes down and she's holding a ball of fluff, which is her new Pomeranian, I think, named Donut. And she introduces the girls, and immediately says, well, you have support and love and your life is going great. His isn't. Okay, but that does not negate the fact that Lala was hurt by the things Tom said. Also, what about all the people at Sandoval's birthday party? He seemed to have a ton of people around him and supporting him during that. And what about Jojo Siwa, his new best friend? In a confessional, Lisa says that Tom is a shell of his former self and that she doesn't want anybody to live with that kind of depression. Lisa basically tells the girls, that she knows he's in a really dark place, and she thinks about some of the things that her brother said before he committed, and she doesn't want to be in a position where she has any regret, and I do not blame her for that at all. Basically, the way Tom is talking to Lisa is a real trigger for her. Lala says that, she doesn't want Tom to wear this for the rest of his life, and she never really gave his mental health a second thought. She kind of just grouped him in with Randall in her mind, as, someone who has no feelings. Lala says that she's holding on to a lot of anger and she doesn't trust anybody, but that she doesn't want to be angry all the time. Scheana says this hasn't been easy, especially for her. Boo-hoo, Scheana. Because he was one of her best friends she ever had. Lisa says, well, doesn't that make it easier to forgive him? And, Sheena's very upset and she says, is it worth losing Ariana? Lisa wants her to talk to Ariana and explain her feelings, and she tells her not to be a people pleaser, even though she's literally telling Scheana what to do. I truly believe that if Ariana had not said, I will not have mutual friends with Tom Sandoval, that Scheana would have been the first one to forgive him. We are back at James and Allie's for the start of the pool party. Everyone is arriving and Schwartz brings them another plant. This is the third plant that he's brought them, and listen, myself for wellness sake, but if you're a cold plunger, you do you, babe. I could never. Tom says that he has been so depressed and overwhelmed, and he needs a healthy way to handle these emotions. Might I suggest talk therapy? I don't know. He seems to think that, like, strange forms of physical punishment are going to exonerate him from his wrongdoings. Okay, so Tom is getting into the tub, and there seems to only be one tub in this room, and I think Billy Lee is also going to do this. So I don't know, is she just gonna get in the tub when he's done? Did they drain the tubs between clients? Like, I have questions, but I don't care enough to Google the answer. Billy Lee crouches down next to the tub and is like, how intense on a scale of 1 to 10. And he says a 9. In his confessional, Sandoval says that he's never been an outsider in his group of friends. And again, actions have consequences. Did we not learn this in, like, kindergarten? He feels like Andy Dufresne in the beginning of Shawshank Redemption. He turns over in the tub and he's on his knees, and he kind of like plants himself face first in the water, and Billy Lee's jaw literally drops. Like, I'm not kidding. I don't know if this is some kind of like extreme cold plunge tactic, but that's the only reason I can have for her dramatic reaction to this. She was jaw dropped for a while, just like watching him down in the water. I feel like she treats him like a child. Like, she's always very animated with her responses, and she's always giving him a lot of positive, affirming words. I'm sure that, she's just trying to be a good friend, but it doesn't come off as genuine to me, and it just seems like she was obviously brought back so Tom could have somebody to film with. And I understand needing somebody else to film scenes with, but I think if we got a little bit more of Tom on his own, doing some serious reflecting, that would have been better. But I don't think it's possible for him, because I don't think you got a show from this. You got to go to Mars with other celebrities. He got to be on that Stars from Mars TV show because of this. So calm down. Calm down. Ariana being exalted to queen status was good for everybody. Lala says that Ariana is on a pedestal, and this is the beginning of Lala essentially turning on Ariana, in my opinion. He says that Ariana has this diva behavior as opposed to somebody who's been hurt, and I just want to know, what do they want her to do? What do they want Ariana to do? Do they want her to be crying in a corner all the time? Would that make them like her more, make them feel more bad for her? Anyway, he hates to see that she is flourishing and Sandoval is crumbling. He cannot handle a strong woman. That's why he's no longer married to Katie. Like, this man. He says he does love Ariana, but he's not going to fawn for her affection. Schwartz says the conversation was triggering, and Ariana agrees and says, yeah, when you talked about her ego, I took it as you talking about my ego. I don't understand that. This is not the first time that she says that or will say that. She always takes anything anybody says and puts it onto herself. But I don't get that. I don't understand that. Maybe Tom was right. Maybe she is a narcissist. Lala says she has to stop being a dog in everyone's fight and start practicing forgiveness. She tells Schwartz that she didn't want it to come across that he should abandon Sandoval. She didn't really mean that, and she says that she sees him being a people pleaser, and that her dad was similar, and everyone took advantage of him, and she thinks that the stress from that is what killed him, and she doesn't want to see the same thing happen to Schwartz. She apologizes for not giving him grace with everything that he was going through last year. We get a flashback of a very intense season 10 fight where, Lala's calling Schwartz a loser. Schwartz called her a housewife and made fun of her lips because that's all he can do. He apologizes for coming for her looks and, says, you're so beautiful and you are such a great mom, and he remembers why he fell in love with her in the first place, platonically, of course. He asks Lala if she could ever have a conversation like this with Sandoval, because it's so beautiful and heartfelt, and he says, Tom's family, and I can't abandon him. And Lala says, I understand that. I'm sorry, my stomach is like going wild this morning. It's like 8 in the morning and I haven't had my breakfast yet. I really wished that Schwartz hadn't added that last thing at the end about, could you potentially have a conversation with Tom about this? He really should have just left it at him and Lala kind of smoothing things over, and then kind of continued that relationship. And then I think just naturally over time, the forgiveness would come to Sandoval. But these people can't just let anything happen. There always has to be an urgentness with it, and oh, you gave me a little bit of grace, could you do that to Tom? No, just calm down. Just give it a minute. Work on one thing at a time. We are back at intimacy with Billy and Tom for another hard pass of a scene for me. They are done cold plunging and they're sitting in this I don't know, recovery area or something. Mom was says that she was afraid they were gonna lose him, and he says, yeah, I got close a couple of times, and I really had to snap out of it. He thought the best way to show that he was sorry, and maybe what everybody wants, was for him to go away. He says he wants to be happy again, but he doesn't think that he's allowed to be. We're back at Allie and James's party, and Ariana asks Scheana about her conversation with Sandoval. She recounts the conversation a bit, and also the conversation that she had with Lisa earlier in the day. She says, Lisa asked us to ease up on him because she's so concerned. Ariana says Lisa's brother and Tom are two completely different people. Tom still won't take responsibility for what he did, and you can see it on Scheana's face in this moment that she already has one foot out the door, so to speak. Ariana is basically like, yeah, I'm not gonna get on my Instagram and ask people to be nice to him. In her confessionals, she says that, yeah, Tom probably did have these thoughts and feelings, but it was because of his own actions in which he didn't care about anybody else's mental health. And, let's not forget that he used Ariana's own mental health struggles against her, and as a reason that he didn't want to break up with her. He's awful. Scheana is crying at this point and says, Tom was such an amazing friend to her, and Ariana says it wasn't genuine. I fully believe that as Tom's partner of 9 years, she heard him say things. She knows the real way that he feels about people, and I think that she genuinely knows that Tom really didn't care about Scheana. She was just a person in his life for 14 years or whatever, and Ariana is too nice of a person to really lay it out there for Scheana. Like, Scheana is her best friend. She's not just gonna look at her and say, Tom hated you. Everything he said to you on the phone in the car that night was true. You don't mean anything to him. So she's trying to do it gently by saying, the relationship was not genuine. Ariana says this is a scary person, and she doesn't believe a word he says, and it all feels like manipulation. All of this stuff that Tom is saying about Scheana being the hardest person to lose it's all BS. He just knows that Scheana is the easiest to manipulate, and that he can easily get her to forgive him. So that's why he's going so hard on Scheana's forgiveness. Now we are at Lala's apartment, and James comes over, and they talk about his sobriety. He's nearly 3 months sober. She asks, what made you get sober? And then she says, you don't have to tell me. But James responds very, very passionately so I don't know what she did to it, but Tom comes in carrying a purse, and of course it's full of beer, because what else would it be? I mean, it was probably a cooler, but whatever. He comes bearing beer. Schwartz invites Tom to Tahoe, and he seems excited, and Schwartz says he thinks it'll be a good opportunity to have some one-on-one time with people. He says, maybe leave your ego here and say, I'm sorry that I hurt you. And Tom says, Lala, I'm sorry I gave you so much fucking content for your podcast and all the merch you sold. Schwartz and Joe are laughing, but I swear you can see Schwartz dying on the inside. Sandoval says Lala and Scheana showed the entire nation how to treat us. I'm sorry, what? He says people followed their lead. This man has lost his damn mind. No, we did not. We saw what you did and we formed our own opinions. Schwartz says this energy is not going to serve you well, and he is right. He's not correct often, but he's correct here. He says he needs to let his guard down a little. Schwartz is optimistic about the trip, but doesn't think it's going to solve everyone's problems. He says Lala has been softening, and he had this really great conversation with her, and she's been so self-aware. And Joe's over there like, oh great, I love that, finally. Like, babe, you don't go here. What are you talking about? Sandoval has this wild look in his someone called her to say that Graham has been in a foster home for 2 months. He bit a couple of times and they were going to take him to a shelter, but they asked if Vanderpump Dogs would take him. James is very emotional and he says, Graham is my best friend and this is a dream come true that he is back with me. He says he wasn't expecting this at all. He thought he was going to come there and talk about Sandoval. He thanks Lisa, and Lisa says he belongs with you, James. They start walking home, and James says, it's me and you again, Graham Greco. I know Lisa wanted to surprise James because it makes for good TV, but it's kind of a lot to spring a dog on someone without them knowing. Especially because he has other animals at home, And that is it for Dog Days of Summer. I thought this was a pretty good episode, and we are really ramping up this season. Like I said, I'm filming this quite a while after this episode came out, and where we are at in the show, things are different. The Tahoe trip was very pivotal for the cast, just like I thought it would be, and so I hope that you enjoyed this recap. I'm going to try to film a bunch and get caught up to where we are current times. If you did enjoy this recap, I would love for you to subscribe and maybe give me a like. I will see you all